Mr. Copperfield, your restoration is complete. I wanted to take you through and show you just a couple of things I did. Have you take a look at it before I ship it to make sure it meets your approval. And the very first thing you should notice that's different is I added inside cabinet illumination so that while the mechanism's playing you can actually see in there. So I hope you like that touch. The refinishing turned out pretty good. If you remember the pictures I showed you before, this panel was very faded, didn't match the color tone of the wood at all. Now it all matches. And all new gold pinstriping paint. And here's the back side. All the metal pieces have been polished out. Nice and shiny again. And I am getting in touch with Paul to see if we can get you a replacement card here. There's supposed to be a bunch of horses there and a track, some trees, a little scene here that's completely faded away from the time it sat in the sun. So we're going to see if you can get your replacement there. And I know you said you've got correct original locks on their way, and so no problem swapping those out once the locks get here. Let's run it and see how it works. Alright, I've loaded up 7 nickels. Number four is the winner. 4 was paying 2 to 1, and there's 2 nickels. Some of the things I did to fix your vacuum leaks was that the horse bellows, that whole assembly came apart. The main vacuum pump, that whole thing came apart, as you saw in the still pictures I sent you. This mechanism all came off, and in here this is your valve stack, and so that needed most of the work. That came apart. There was a lot of debris inside, and everything when it went back together has been sealed. Any little cracks, all the hoses have been checked. Your hoses were fine, none had to be replaced. But if you remember, the vacuum used to only go up about midway at its best. We got about 20, and that's as far as it would go, and that's why it wouldn't complete a cycle. But I'm going to play it now and you'll see what happens. I'm going to start up a game. And see, the vacuum now is up at 40, pretty much pegged out. Only when the horses get to the very end, it'll drop down a little. Okay, that's normal. And you heard the payout. But that drop at the very end is when you create a large vacuum leak, because the way this works is once the first horse comes in and wins, you can't have a second horse, or you don't want any more horses moving even the slightest. So the first one to hit their peg, all the other horses have to stop. And it does that by taking this bar that's across the bottom underneath those tubes. You got 1 tube for each horse. There's a bar that when it opens up, it lets all of the vacuum go for all 7 horses. So effectively what that does is pull all 7 horse pouches in and holds them, and that will cause or prevent any horses from moving anymore. But in doing that, you've got 7 pouches all getting vacuum sucked at one time, and that's when you have this go down like it does. But before, it would be at 20 at the max and then drop down to nothing when we got to that part of the sequence. So now with everything resealed and all the little leaks taken care of, you know, every single one of these has been sealed. You know, there's about 30-40 of them, and the same thing, you've got every one of these pouches has a tube going in. That joint has been sealed, every single one of them. You had one spring missing right here that's needed to hold the number 6 horse closed, and I replaced that spring. And then also I put a brand new spring right there. That one's been replaced. The one that was in there was not the right tension and had been messed around with. It was kind of, I have it here. Here's what it looked like. Tweaked, and so that wasn't doing a very good job at moving that lever. Here's some, this is the finish that I used, Varathane clear semi-gloss and special walnut, and then this is the gold flake that I use. So I'm giving you a little extra that if you have to do any cabinet touch-up, if you ding it or whatever, you'll have some extras. There was a handful of screws that were loose throughout the entire assembly. I went ahead and checked every screw to make sure everything was tight. In this case, this piece, the screw and nut were missing altogether, so I added one there. Trying to remember all the other things I did. There were adjustments that were needed here for your fingers to hit the nickels properly, and like all the rest of the bellows, this one came completely off and was resealed all the way around, including where this hooks onto it. The chain had to come out and be completely cleaned and lubricated. It was pretty gummed up with all the old grease that was in there. The motor also, I never sent you still pictures of this motor, but this motor came completely apart. You have new oil in the gearbox, the commutator was cleaned, the brushes that are on each side were cleaned up, you got new grease in the back end, so basically went through the entire motor for you. And the new lights that I added are right here. They plug into this outlet, so I went to the store and got a matching plug, and there's the top racetrack cabinet light plugs in here. It's not in at the moment, but will be, so all 3 of these plugs are hooked up. Now this first plug, that only gets power when you start the race, but these other 2 plugs are hot all the time, so that's why the cabinet lights are on when the game's not running. If you remember, you had noticed that this screw was sticking way up. That's because the threads that it goes into were damaged. So I took a tap and I re-tapped the hole. Screw goes in nice and easy now. And then you were missing this screw and this one, which didn't hurt anything structurally, it just attaches this panel, but I went ahead and added screws. And then, don't know if you remember, but most of this white was all flaked off and gone. I went through and touched up all the colors and repainted this one. So try to spruce it up a little bit for you. The old light bulb looks like it's ready to go at any second, so I replaced it with this new one. You also have the same light bulbs for the ones I added inside the cabinet. So I tried to keep that correct period look. The cabinet was separating along this joint here and here. There was almost a good 1/4 inch gap, and what I did was I glued the joint going all the way along here. It's like a tongue and groove, and then clamp this whole thing side to side, brought it back together tight, and then put screws in from the bottom on the back side. So it's all good and solid now, it won't come apart again on you. I also fixed the end of the electrical cord. You could see the two conductors, the black and the white wire, coming out here. So I took this apart and brought this shield or outer sheath way inside, re-terminated it, so a little safer for you.
For more information, visit GameRoomRepair.com.